Hello! I can't get the camera to focus properly on me today, so I'm going to be very blurry and the picture is going to look like shit, but that's fine. So, part 4 of The Hero of Ages. Um, well, lots of really important reveals here, actually. Um, this is this is the revelations part of the book, and boy are some of these revelations big ones. And in fact, I think I'm going to really talk only about the revelations, because the actual events here aren't all that interesting. They're not that they're boring to read about, but they are, there's not much to say about them. But the revelations are a big deal. So, first of all, the revelation that what we have been perceiving as the ever-present voice of Reen in Vin's head is actually Ruin. Now, this revelation is going to interact with a different revelation later in the section, so I'm going to talk about it more as well then. But for now, I just want to say this is a really, really clever twist, because it is not something I think anyone would have ever expected. Like, it's impossible to predict, because it makes so much sense for Wynne to constantly be hearing Reen. But I did make note in my head of the fact that she hadn't heard Reen for a very long time, and recently she started hearing him more. Like, I can't remember if she heard him more than once or twice in the entire second book. But in the first book, and now in the third book, she was hearing him constantly. And now that we know who it is, it makes so much more sense. So Reen, which actually kind of sounds like Ruin, it's like 2 letters away from Ruin. I don't know how that's also an interesting connection. But Reen to Vin is what God was to Zane. And I never really noticed that. Which leads me to the other big reveal that happened here, which is that the Kelsier that Spook has been seeing is also Ruin. Now, I actually did not. I called this eventually. I called it after Preservation died, which we'll get to. But I did think it was Preservation for a long time, actually. And the reason I thought it was Preservation is because, as far as I knew, Ruin couldn't just appear to people, first of all. Secondly, Kelsier had given Spook elementic powers, which seemed like something that Ruin definitely couldn't do, and something that Preservation probably could, because we know that Allomancy is Preservation's power. So I was, like, fairly certain that Kelsier was actually Preservation. But then Preservation died. Which is a huge, huge moment, which I really, really love. Like, the quiet, uneventful passing of one of the 2 gods of the world, the way that it's revealed in the italicized portion at the beginning of the next chapter after it happens, that is actually what we just witnessed. It is probably my favorite moment in this trilogy so far. Like, just how soft and quiet and gentle and non-climactic the death of a god is. I love it. I really have to give Sanderson props for that. I still have chills thinking about reading that moment. That was great. But Preservation's death eliminated him from the running for the identity of Kelsier up in Urto. Which made me think that Kelsier was Ruin, obviously, especially when he started telling Spook to kill people all the time. Basically sounding like God did to Zane. But it still didn't explain how he gave Spook the power of Pewter. And I thought it was never going to be explained. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, he's a god, he can do what he wants. But no, Sanderson is that committed to the hard magic system that even something that is at first apparently a miracle of God is still fully explained by the magic system. Because it turns out that the tip of the sword that Spook was stabbed with was actually working as a hemalurgic spike. Now, I was aware from a previous chapter that hemalurgic spikes don't necessarily have to be a specific like size and shape, so they can be any old sharp piece of metal, because Marsh said so. But I was not aware. But I was also aware that they have to be stabbed into really specific locations. So my question here is: was the guy who stabbed Spook, was he being directed by Ruin? In which case he himself would have to have had a spike? Or, much more likely, was this actually an act of insane chance and providence that Ruin jumped on? The former would maybe make the story neater and less reliant on chance, but the latter seems more realistic because it feels kind of weird for that random soldier to have been one of Ruin's people. So I'm going to assume that that's what's going on here. That it was random chance and Ruin just immediately saw an opportunity and jumped in and claimed credit for Spook's newfound powers, which really had nothing to do with him. I mean, they did, because hemalurgy is his power, but you know what I mean. So that was a big deal, and the Ruin being behind Quellion's crimes as well, I like. It makes this storyline less frustrating, because the whole we're going to kill anyone with noble blood thing always struck me as odd, as just not a very realistic thing for Quellion to do. Even once it was explained that he was using it to find Allomancers, I was still a bit like, would he really do that? Like, that seems like a monstrous plan for someone who's, like, clearly got at least some ideals to enact. But him being controlled by Ruin makes it make a ton more sense. So I'm less bothered by that aspect of the story now. I'm still a bit bothered, which I didn't talk about last time, about the whole Spook Beldry love story. I don't know. Something about it just feels off. Like, the whole, like, oh... I mean, he stalked her. He stalked her. I don't love that. I just don't like the whole, oh, he fell in love with her by watching her from afar. Oh. Like, no. Bad. I don't like that trope. But okay. We can ignore that for now. Because Spook might be dead. It might be irrelevant because I'm not sure Spook made it out. I guess we'll see in the next section. That felt pretty deadly, what he did at the end there, running into the burning building. So we'll see where that goes. Now, what else? Ruin talks about how, or not Ruin, but one of the things at the start of the chapter talks about how Ruin's body has been hidden from him, and that's why he doesn't have his full power. I'm guessing that what was hidden from him is the trust that the Khandra have, which is also the Atium. So is there a specific hunk of Atium that is Ruin's body, or is Atium itself Ruin's body, like all of Atium? And if all of Atium is Ruin's body, what the fuck were the pits of Hath's in? Like, what was going on there? If that turns out to be the case, I'm really curious about what's going on in the pits of Hath's in. And if Atium is Ruin's body, that means that Preservation's body is a different metal. Presumably the mysterious metal that those little beads are made of that made Elend into a Mistborn. of which, so there's apparently a lot less of Preservation's body than Ruin's body, if I'm right about this. Which makes sense. Preservation is much weaker right now and also dead. What else happened here? Yeah, Ruin and Preservation being gendered male is still weird to me. Especially because Vin at one point is like, oh, Ruin is sounding so human right now. And at that moment, the narration says, Ruin went from being it to being him in her mind, which, first of all, no, it didn't. You've been calling Ruin him since the start of the book. That's just not true. You're lying. Secondly, why him? Why not her? I mean, I guess it makes sense because Ruin is appearing as Reen, who is male, so I guess it makes sense for Vin to think that way. Why does Vin... But then we had the next question. Why does Vin assume Preservation is male? Vin is like, oh, your other half, the other person who is your opposite, where's he? And it's like, why would that be male? In fact, it would make more sense. Even if we're looking at a strictly binary gender idea, which this book definitely is, it would make so much more sense to assume that the opposite of the seemingly male Ruin would be female. It just strikes me as weird. And this book in general has this habit, I've noticed, this entire trilogy rather, where whenever someone's identity is not known, all of the characters always assume that every single person whose identity is not known is male. Like, whenever there's, like, a shadowy figure, or Vin senses allomancy but doesn't see anyone, or whatever, it's automatically assumed to be male, which is weird to me. But I don't want to end on that note, because I want to end on a much cooler note, because the two revelations of Reen being Ruin and Kelsier in Urto being Ruin together made me have a much bigger revelation. Vin's earring is a hemalurgic spike. I figured it out. Because the moment it was revealed that Kelsier was Ruin, and specifically the moment it was revealed that as soon as Spook took out the spike, Ruin disappeared and couldn't talk to him anymore, that immediately told me that Ruin can't just talk to people. He needs them to be spiked. Which means Vin must be spiked. And I actually spent a while thinking about this. Like, I spent like 20 minutes just sitting thinking, like, is Vin spiked? When did she get spiked? Like, I don't remember anything. Like, I remember Spook getting spiked, but I don't remember Vin. And then it hit me. It's the earring. The earring is the spike. Which means Vin's mom was probably serving Ruin. She was maybe spiked at some point in her life. I don't know. And she didn't just randomly kill Vin's sister. She killed her to create a hemalurgic spike. To spike Vin. Now, what ability that spike confers to Vin, I don't know. I'm guessing maybe none, because Vin is definitely still a MISTBORN without the earring. Like, she seems to have all of her abilities without the earring. In fact, some of them, I've suspected that some of her abilities are stronger without the earring. So I'm really not sure. Maybe the earring doesn't do anything. Like, maybe because it was a baby and the baby was just a normal baby with no abilities, maybe she didn't really get anything out of it. Like, maybe the spike only lets Ruin control, well, not control her, but influence her. I don't know. But Either way, I'm really proud of myself for figuring that out, even though I'm sure some people figured it out earlier. But I'm proud that I figured it out now before it's probably inevitably revealed in the next section. Anyway, I'm going to end on that very proud, self-satisfied, smug note for this section, and I'm going to go read the end of The Hero of Ages and also Mistborn Era 1. I'm very excited for this. Bye.